When it comes to blades, there are few places in the world with as much history and folklore as Japan. Their love of the sword and its respective arts from design to forging to kendo are second to none. So naturally, this part of their cultural identity has spilled into pop culture and spread throughout the world through Japanese entertainment, most recently, the explosion of anime and manga. For the last 20 years, one manga in particular has encapsulated just about everything Japanese folklore has to offer regarding swords and turned it into a worldwide phenomenon. And of course, I'm talking about One Piece.
Hi, this is Mike from Bonsai Pop, and I am here with Mini Katana today to talk about One Piece, but more importantly, we're going to be talking about Zoro and the latest addition to his collection, the Enma.
For a manga about pirates and fruit that give you superpowers at the cost of your ability to float, there is an exceptionally heavy emphasis on swordplay. Now Zoro, who is a fan favorite and the first official member of the Straw Hats crew next to Luffy, relies solely on his swords and, of course, monstrous strength to get him through pretty much any scenario. His skill and tenacity has not only earned him first mate status, though some will argue his only role is combatant. Now I'm not gonna lie, when I first saw a dude with an unironic third katana between his teeth, it came off as kinda goofy, but after a while, it somehow changed into just being straight up cool. Zoro's got attitude, style, and the skills to back it up, but most importantly, he's got some dope swords. Now it is thanks in particular to Zoro that the sword lore of One Piece is available to us, because without him, I mean, Luffy would be dead, but besides that, when we get introduced to a new big bad with a cool blade, it certainly wouldn't mean as much, because really the only person who cares is Zoro. However, we know that within One Piece, there is an entire grading system to special swords made by legendary blacksmiths, from the 50 skillful grade to the 21 excellent grade to the 12 supreme grade swords of legend wielded by the most powerful characters the series has introduced so far. Now obviously the idea of a legendary sword is not exclusive to Japan. In European folklore we have Excalibur, there's Zulfikar in the Middle East, the Asi from India, you get the idea. However, few nations have lived and died by the sword in quite the same way as Japan during the last millennium. Naturally, the reverence for swords and their deeds was woven into the very fabric of their culture. We're talking Ame no Habikiri, the storm blade that struck down the legendary snake Yamata no Orochi, the grass cutter or Kusanagi no Tsurugi, which gave the wielder the power of the wind. Some of them are even real, like the supposedly cursed Muramasa blades, though the smith Muramasa himself has become a legend in his own right. The idea of swords granting special powers and enhancing the ability of their wielders or even being cursed is nothing new in the Japanese ethos. They say, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. So just like Star Wars stole from world religion, One Piece of course borrows heavily from already established folklore. In fact, Enma's sister sword is literally called Ame no Habikiri, a straight rip from the legend that I just mentioned. So with such an emphasis on swords, it was almost inevitable that the Straw Hats would end up in a place that highly resembles Japan. And with the Wano arc, we certainly got that in spades. Now, if you're not up on the Wano arc just yet, or haven't caught up with most of the battle on Onigashima, there may be some spoilers, so just keep that in mind moving forward. Now, upon arrival, Zoro was still using the Shusui as his main weapon and had been since Thriller Bark. Mastering Shusui took him years and brought Zoro to new heights. However, it turned out that the Shusui is a stolen national treasure of Wano, which got Zoro in some hot water. Eventually understanding that the blade should remain at rest, Zoro was offered Enma as recompense. Now this is a huge deal. Enma was originally wielded by the legendary samurai and member of the infamous Roger Pirates, Kozuki Oden, a man who should still be ruling Wano to this day, but instead had his life cut short by the now Emperor of the Sea, Kaido. If you're a big shonen stan, then Enma should probably ring a bell. It's the Japanese name for the Chinese Buddhist deity Yama, who rules over hell, which is also called Naraku. Now King Enma was a prevalent character in both Dragon Ball Z and Yu Yu Hakusho, and Naraku is obviously the name of the main villain of Inuyasha, so by name alone, the sword carries some weight. The saya and suka are violet or murasaki, the color of nobility, and are decorated in gold or keen, representing the sun, which is the highest deity in Shinto beliefs. Enma is also one of the only weapons to ever wound the nigh invincible Kaido, King of the Beasts. Not a bad trade. It's also an excellent grade sword that may have the ability to increase into a supreme grade sword if Zoro can manage to permanently blacken its blade. That being said, it is a dangerous weapon, which is something Zoro is pretty used to at this point, but unlike its sister blade, which is said to be able to cut the heavens, Enma is said to be able to cut through the bottom of hell, and like a vampire, it draws out the wielder's Boshukohaki excessively, something that could quickly result in its owner's death. It's because of that nobody particularly wanted it until Zoro showed up. He's not exactly what you'd call a genius. The Enma blade is a Shobuzukuri style katana, and while these weapons have a savagely sharp edge, the difference is their point. They are needle sharp and designed for tip cutting and piercing. They have no issue with the tip cut, but their pierce is small and the points of these swords tend to be fragile. It is a big difference between the weighty black blade of the Shusui that Zoro previously owned. Moving forward, as promised, Enma was able to injure Kaido for the second time. However, it was Zoro's fight with the Lunarian King that awoke the dormant power inside of him necessary to truly wield Enma. Like Kaido, King 2 is almost invincible. With the battle dragging on, Zoro's concentration began to slip, causing Enma to begin to drain his life force and go haywire. This caused a flashback once more to Zoro's origins on his home island, where he trained relentlessly to honor the passing of his rival and best friend. Her sword that was gifted to him, Wado Ichimonji, that he's carried this entire time, and his new sword Enma were created by the same man, Shimotsuki Kozaburo, a legendary Wano blacksmith who left the island and eventually became the grandfather of the very girl who would awaken Zoro's desire to be the best swordsman in the world. The lessons this man passed down to Zoro flooded back into his head, making him realize that coming to own Enma was truly fate. And with this new understanding and determination, Zoro was able to awaken his Haushukohaki, or the color of the Supreme King, which is a power wielded only by one in millions, finally allowing him to fully master Enma and use the King of Hell sword arts. With this new power and legendary sword, he was able to do his part in the Battle of Onigashima and defeat King, an act thought almost to be completely impossible. What's interesting is that One Piece's creator, Ichiro Oda, has said his manga will likely end around 2025, so we are getting somewhat closer to the finish here. And like Luffy's straw hat, which was bequeathed to him by Shanks, Enma reached Zoro's hands through another one of the legendary Roger pirates, Kozuki Oden. So what do you think? Do you think this is going to be Zoro's final sword? Do you think the rest of the straw hats are going to receive some kind of hand-me-downs as well? We would definitely love to hear your thoughts and theories, so please let us know. And of course, subscribe for more Blade lore, and check out minikatana.com for some awesome quality replicas like mine here. They come in dull and sharp, so make sure to be responsible. And with that, I'm Mike, and thanks for watching.